Everybody has had that moment, especially in midlife, where you hit adversity and you're like, I'm just not feeling motivated. So, what do? You dive into the world of motivation. And I've done that. You spend hours scrolling these videos, somebody's yelling at you, telling you, you got to do this, you got to do that. And, it works for a little while, maybe a few hours, but then reality sets back in and it doesn't really work. That's not a character flaw, that's not weakness. The problem is that somebody along the way kind of sold you the idea that the feeling is the problem, and it's not. And if you're over 40 and you've been through serious adversity, job loss, divorce, death of a loved one, you kind of know deep down that motivation is not really the solution. And the other problem is nobody says something that needs to be said out loud. So I'm going to say it. The motivation industry, and it's a business, is not built to change your life. It's built to make you feel good for a little while and then move on to buy the next thing. So here's what's happening when you actually watch one of these motivational videos. And trust me, I've watched a ton of them in my life, especially in the last few years. Your brain is releasing dopamine, the same chemical that is released when you eat chocolate or you feel something good, or any of those times. And the problem is that with these videos, you're not doing any work to earn that dopamine. And the motivation industry has figured out that if they can trigger that momentary release of dopamine, you're going to be hooked and you are going to believe their content, you're going to buy their course, and you're going to be theirs. You see, here's the thing that the motivation industry doesn't want you to know is that hit of dopamine is meant to pull you through the moment. It is not meant to sustain you. You see, when you face adversity, but you go ahead and show up and work out anyway, even though you're exhausted, or you have a difficult conversation, the dopamine doesn't last. And that's when most people stop, not because they are weak, but because they're trained to look for something that simply doesn't last. When you're in your early 20s and something doesn't work out, you think to yourself, you know what, I still have time to figure it out. I've still got runway left. But now when you're in your 40s, 50s, or older, you realize, you know what, I don't have as much time left. And that's when a little bit of panic starts to set in. That same motivational video doesn't really land the same way because you've already tried it. You've tried the hype, you've tried the video, you've bought a course, whatever the case is, and it's just not resonating like maybe it used to. But you're still here. You're getting back up. You're getting back after it, and that's what counts. And what I've learned, not only through my own experience, but just in talking to others, friends, people in this community, is that when things like that happen, motivation isn't, not only is it not effective, it's almost insulting. Don't tell me to feel better. Don't tell me to just get over it. That is toxic positivity. And when you're at this point in your life, to hear those kind of things can be insulting. I mean, it's not really just, annoying, cheerful people. It's really kind of this pressure that comes from our society to bypass pain and not to go through it. You can't out hustle a relationship loss. You can't motivate yourself through grief. But what you can do, and what I've learned, is you can keep moving. Now, if this is landing with you, if you have kind of fallen prey to all the motivational stuff that's out there, go ahead and subscribe. We put out content. I put out content once a week, and your subscribing really helps the algorithm to find more people that need this kind of help. Okay, so what do we do? So motivation is not the answer. So if it's not the answer, then what is? Well, really, there's two things. And it's not complicated, but it's not super easy either. Okay, the first is system over feelings. Now, a system doesn't really care how you feel, it just kind of runs. So, an example is when you get up in the morning and you go to brush your teeth, you're not doing that out of a feeling, In fact, many days you probably are so tired you don't feel like doing it, but the system is in place and you do it anyway. Now, I've seen other people experience this. I've gone through it myself. And the bottom line is, you don't just magically wake up one day and feel better and then start moving. You actually start moving and then you feel better. And the second thing is identity over motivation. You see, motivation asks, do I feel like doing this? Whereas identity asks, is this something that somebody like me would do? And I can testify to this. You know, after my sister passed away, I went through several months of really serious grief and depression. And I tried to find some things to motivate myself. It worked maybe for a brief amount of time. But then when I really started diving into resilience, I learned that we are what we believe, and we are kind of a combination of our thoughts. And so I started to visualize myself as a person who acts and behaves and thinks a certain way. And if you do that day after day, it really can have an effect. I'm doing that right now, actually, with this health journey that I'm on, really trying to focus on my physical pillar. I'm trying to identify myself as somebody who's healthy and in shape. And even when I don't feel motivated, I still am that person who shows up to go to the gym, even though I may not feel like it, or cook a healthy dinner when it's so much easier to, order junk food. So identifying yourself in a certain way and then telling yourself that this is who I am now can be a very, very powerful tool. Motivation asked me how I felt. Resilience, it didn't care. Please know, I'm not telling you that feelings don't matter, because they absolutely do. But motivation is not the driver. It's really just a passenger. And the motivation industry has made a fortune off of you and me waiting until we feel like doing it, feel more motivated, feel like this is the right time. And that's how they stay in business. Everybody gets knocked down in life. You cannot get through this life and not have some scars. I love the TV show Shrinking, and there was a great line at the end of the last season where Harrison Ford's character looked at Jason Segel, and Jason Segel had just said, I'm 40 whatever years old and I've got all these scars. And Harrison Ford looked at him and said, that's fantastic, because what a shame it would be to be 45 years old and to have no scars. We all get knocked down, and motivation will not help you get back up, but being resilient, just getting up, will. The hype will fade, the dopamine will go on or go away. You'll be looking for the next hit of dopamine. But what you choose to do when none of that is working, that is really who you are. It is not over when you get knocked down or when you lose. It's only over when you give up. Remember, resilience is not something that any of us are born with. This is something that you have to work on every single day.